We all have those things we loved as kids. Things that we will always cherish. Things that made us who we are today. Like a favorite toy, or a book, maybe even a favorite movie, or a TV show, and maybe even a favorite video game. But what if we could look back? What if those memories didn't have to be forever? Maybe they'll be just as good as we remember, or maybe they won't. For me, video games have always been a big part of my life. From playing Pokémon on my DS to Halo 1 on the PC. But it wasn't always this way. There were some things I used to watch and play which were not necessarily critically acclaimed. Things that people may look back on without the similar sentiment that they have towards Pokémon. So today, I'm going to be looking at one of my childhood cherished games, and that is Quantum of Solace. The year is 2008. A year where filmmakers had a spot of bother with the Writers Guild of America, who took to the streets demanding fair pay for their work. Outrageous, right? Imagine paying the people who write the things that make you money. We live in a crazy world. Many films and television shows released were heavily affected by these strikes. Some shows like Lost and The Office having their seasons shortened or experienced heavy changes in their storytelling. And in the case of films, we have X-Men Origins Wolverine. Terminator Salvation. And Transformers Revenge of the Fallen.
Give me your faith.
Yeah, okay. Between me and you, I don't think the writer's strike had much of an effect on the quality of Transformers 2.
I am directly below. Enemy scrotum.
As well as the film and television shows mentioned, Quantum of Solace was heavily affected by the strikes. Directed by Mark Forster, Quantum of Solace follows a Bond who's a little upset and vengeful after the events of the previous film. Attempted to track down an organisation called Quantum, because they didn't have the rights to Spectre yet, while killing anyone he can with an extremely shaky camera and terrible editing along the way. Now, I actually have a soft spot for Quantum. I think it's quite like an underappreciated James Bond film. It's certainly not the worst Craig Bond. No, that still belongs to Spectre.
Cuckoo.
However, it is very messy, unfocused, and quite unoriginal. It took the unique approach of being more of a sequel, rather than just sort of like a straight-up standalone story that Bond films usually are, which I did find quite good. But the film was being shot with an unfinished script, which was being written and rewritten by Mark Forster and James Bond himself on the days of shooting. With only the action scenes planned out, it seemed to be going just swimmingly. Seeing as the Broccolis loved money so much, the idea of a delay was unfathomable. So instead, they pushed forward with both the film and its marketing campaign, featuring the topic of today's video. With Call of Duty developer Treyarch behind the wheel, and Activision taking the reins from EA in the publishing role, development was very rushed, reportedly only having 9 months of production and difficulties in many areas, making for a rather unoriginal, hard to follow and messy game to fit in well with its movie. Quantum of Solace was a game I owned on several different devices over the years. First being the Wii, which is where I played it the most with one of my close friends at the time. We both would see how quickly we could play through certain levels on the hardest difficulty, which was the 007 difficulty, and then take turns 1v1 each other on multiplayer private matches. I did get battered in those 1v1s, but we don't need to talk about that. It still baffles me that I was that competent with aiming with a Wii controller, let alone finishing the game on 007 mode where you literally can die in 2 shots. It was certainly no cakewalk. I remember even investing on one of those Wii gun things at the time, which if anything actually made things more difficult. The Wii, like many households of my time, was our first gaming console, back when they were all the craze and they were literally everywhere. I was an unintentional Nintendo fanboy back in the day. I used to play all the bangers on there. You got your standard Mario Kart, your Wii Sports, Super Mario Bros. Was a favourite on there, and of course Bionicle Heroes. And then even COD 4. Yeah, the COD 4. The lobbies were filled with hackers after a period of time, but that added to its charm. Joining a lobby to see if you either flew into the air like a god or be instantly killed over and over again by a fully automatic sniper was my first introduction to gambling. My other console, of course, was my trusty silver DS, which I did upgrade to a DSi, if you can believe.
Wow.
I think it still has the original Beast Quest stickers on it somewhere. I need to go and try and find it. I also had Quantum of Solace on the DS, but that was interesting, to say the least. I do not remember this. Oh, okay. I really should have read those. Oh! Why is it not aiming at him? It wasn't until a few years later that I managed to get my hand on an Xbox 360, where like the whole world just opened up to me, where one of the first games I bought on it was, yes, you guessed it, Quantum of Solace, the quintessential shooter for all gamers. It breaks my heart, but I couldn't actually get the Wii, my original Wii, up and running, as it has been ruined by how many times I tried jailbreaking it. But also I snapped the sensor cable when I was packing it away once. So yeah, so to experience this modern piece of art, we'll be using the PC version, and also because it's the easiest to record. The Quantum of Solace follows the plot, kind of the film, starting off with a big bombastic shootout through Mr. White's villa as we try to bring him in for questioning. Oh, wait, that doesn't actually happen, does it? But anyway, this mission is fine. It serves as a sort of combat tutorial, showing us the basic Call of Duty shooting mechanics everyone is familiar with, as well as some third-person cover-based shooting mechanics too. The combination of first-person shooting, the third-person cover mechanics make for quite a unique experience, one which I found captivating back in the day. Pulling the camera back while blind firing over cover, showing you that yes, you are James Bond, is such a great design choice to sort of keep you in the moment. The shooting does feel good too, you know, but what do you expect? It is from Treyarch. They have been on that Call of Duty machine for maybe about 6 years at that point. It feels responsive and snappy. Enemies die in an appropriate number of bullets to feel satisfying, unlike 007 Legends. You know, the death sounds, although few, are funny. And the feedback you get from the guns are great too. But yes, the guns. The guns. For the most part, they feel and sound great. They really knocked it out of the park with the design here, especially with the main P99 pistol, which we'll be using most of the time. It just sounds so meaty and strong, especially when being compared to his wet white brother in 007 Legends. It all just feels very Bond. There are a few guns that do break the sound barrier, which did make me chuckle. But I feel that's just a PC glitch, as I do not remember that happening as a kid, and I feel like I would have remembered something like that. Throughout the missions, you are given more and more guns to test out along the way. In the first mission, it's kind of basic. You have your starting P99 pistol. There's another pistol that you can pick up off some goons, a UMP, which you can also pick up off the goons, and finally, one of the most insane shotguns in gaming. This thing is incredible, okay? The sound is amazing. It's almost like too loud where it gets a little bit like ear-blowing uppery. It's just like so broken with the range as well, as enemies have quite a small health pool. They normally die in like two to three shots unless you go for the head. You can just send people flying from across the room with this thing. It's a shame it's only available in like 2 of the missions, because this thing is definitely a highlight. We're also shown the hacking mechanic in this opening section. In this game, which is just sort of like pressing buttons on a keypad when prompted to. You know, it's fine. It doesn't feel like padding because the minigame is so short and it's nothing as egregious as the 007 Legends hacking, thank fuck. So it just adds a little layer, you know, which also does feel quite Bond. Having a high-tech phone that hacks into things does go with the vibe. And at the end of the mission, we do get the mandatory gun barrel shot. We are then treated to a pretty great original Bond song performed by, I believe it was Richard Fortus and Kelly, who I haven't actually heard of, which I think is genuinely a step above from the weird and annoying Another Way to Die. I cannot stand that song. You know, it might genuinely be up there with Die Another Day. I don't actually mind parts of that song. It goes like the dun dun, but then it's just like then it goes another. It's just, I hate it, man. It's awful. We then see a recreation of the car chase from the beginning of the film, which is the first introduction to the seizure-inducing editing that this film has. It would have been great if we could have played that bit, but we can't have everything, can we? The title sequence ends and brings us into the second mission, where Bond chases a man called Mitchell through Siena. Which is probably one of the better sequences in the film, but it is also just ruined by that horrific editing. It still makes my blood boil to this day, just how awful the editing is in that film. Just leave it to the Bourne film. And they did it great, but nothing else in that era did it anywhere near as good as that. However, this mission is very similar to the previous one. You move through a sequence of rooms or buildings, achieving your 00 status over 1,000 times. Until we fade to black and the ending cutscene plays to the mission. The mission then ends with a very mid-2000s quick-time event boss fight, replacing the seizure-inducing rope swinging fight from the film, but just with less rope swinging. Now I'm going to say something crazy, okay? Hot take alert, right? People give quick-time events a lot of flack, but I don't know if it's because I grew up in the era where they were so popular, or it's just the rose tint on my glasses is incredibly strong, but I kind of like it.
Because I liked it. Hell, I loved it. I'm sitting
Here they aren't too annoying to the point where you're like so focused on what button you need to press rather than focusing on the cool spectacle on screen. So I think they actually did it quite well here. I mean, considering what we got in 007 Legends, if I had to pick between the two, can you guess what I'd pick? The next mission then leads us to the Bregenz Opera House in Vienna, where we are then introduced to the stealth mechanics. Here you're able to now equip suppressors to every weapon or use a takedown with quite cool animation to take down the guards silently in very simple line of sight stealth. You know, it's nothing crazy. You know, although the stealth is very basic, I still found it enjoyable. I think it fits quite well in the game. It's no Dishonored where you're given like so many tools at your disposal to dispatch foes in unique ways, or like Ghost of Tsushima where you can dip in and out of stealth and combat. But, you know, it's just fine. It's serviceable. I do really like those takedowns, though. It's just fun, okay? Sue me.
because I liked it.
And then moving on to the fourth mission, where Bond and Camilla crash land in Bolivia and have to shoot their way through a sinkhole with a very mid-2000s turret section and in a helicopter fight. These first four missions are probably the worst part about this game. They genuinely feel almost identical in terms of their structure. It's just shooting gallery nature, and although the gameplay here is fun, it's very samey. It isn't enough to carry this above feeling quite average. The environments here too are kind of lackluster. Although it gets the gist of it visually, you know where you are if you've seen the film. You can be like, oh, okay, this is... But apart from the bit when they just shoot down the Bregenz Opera little thing and it just falls down on you, this game does take a few sort of like, you know, we've got this cool sequence in the film, let's just blow everything up and kill everyone. I had the same sentiment when I was a kid too. These first few missions were always my least favourite, you know, quick bursts of gamer fuel injected chaos which fill you up for a time, but then you're sort of leaving rather unsatisfied afterwards. It's kind of like the starter to the main course, if you will. But where this game really starts to get going, where it really shines, is when CGI Daniel Craig has a flashback which fills the other 2/3 of the game with sequences from a far better movie, Casino Royale. Now this really is the good stuff. Playing through these missions was actually very enjoyable. This is where the nostalgia goggles were basically glued to my face and I had to rip them off to try and look at this a little bit more critically. You know, whereas the Quantum missions felt rather aimless and messy, the Casino Royale missions feel like they have a sort of a natural progression to one another, leading from sequence to sequence and building upon each other until they reach their climax. And this is how you craft a great shooter campaign, or any story for that matter. You need to have a build-up to make the climax feel like a climax. It's basic, otherwise it just becomes noise, and that is a point that I made in my 007 Legends video as well. Most of these missions are great, you know, there are some real standouts, and the adaptation from screen to controller is done with a surprising amount of loyalty in some cases. Sure, there's plenty more people to shoot. I don't really remember James Bond hosing down people with a machine gun while chasing the bomb maker, but what are you gonna do?
We wanted to question him, not to kill him.
Sorry.
It's still a really fun sequence to play through, and the environment here just looks so much better, so much more detailed and refined. Almost as though they spent most of their development time on these levels. In fact, all the levels in the Casino Royale section look much better. There's a lot more detail, and the level design in general just feels a lot more fluid. And I think a big part of that is because they actually knew what they were adapting, so they didn't have to sort of like deal with a Frankenstein script that kept changing. They could actually look at Casino Royale and be like, okay, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this. Apart from the exhilarating parkour sequence from the film being adapted so well here, you know, it highlights some of the best moments with Bond's score, really getting the blood pumping, you know, jumping through the cranes, slamming through the wall, all of that stuff. The best part of this entire game is the several missions in the Casino Royale run.
This is a waste of time. I have no intention of cheating Mr. Obano.
You can tell him yourself. Move!
You start off quite slow, a slow infiltration through the casino, taking out the mercenary troops stealthily as you move, climbing onto ledges, and moving across to not get spotted. And then there's a shootout in the bathhouse with some great close quarters action, and after that some more stealth, and then a final shootout in the casino room with some great verticality to the level design as goons shoot from above and all other sides everywhere. It's chaos. And then the ending with another really well created stairwell fight ripped straight from the film. This entire sequence alone is what makes this game still hold up to me. They even recreate the scene where Bond gets poisoned and stumbles into the car. You don't even kill anyone in that part, like what the hell? It perfectly encapsulates what makes a great sequence of missions, you know, the building on each other as they go, mixing together the mechanics, bare bones as they may be, they've taught you through the previous missions. With a great build up to explosive action, this game can do well. It's how you keep a player invested without making them bored. The Miami Museum and the airport sequences are of similar quality in all fairness, infiltrating the museum in a stealthy fashion before going in and murdering everyone. However, the airport boss fight is a little bit odd. Instead of like a cool little quick time event sequence like they have done in the previous ones, you've just got to shoot the bloke when he pops out behind some carriages. It's a little anticlimactic if you ask me, but you know, maybe they just wanted some variety. We then have a mission which concludes the ending of Casino Royale, the sequence in Venice when we follow Vesper through the streets of the city, dispatching goons as we go. This is definitely one of the weaker missions of this section, but it still looks and plays well enough to not sour the taste of the absolute joyride that were the previous missions. I generally think this mission is still better than any of the Quantum missions. But then at the end we finally come back to the Quantum of Solace, playing through the final mission as we have a strange boss fight with the screamiest Bond villain, Dominic Green. He literally goes, "Allah!" He's such an awful villain, you know. And like the other Quantum levels, this just kind of feels like a wet fart. Quantum of Solace does feel very much like Treyarch's B team working overtime. As Call of Duty World at War released the same year, and that game, World at War is phenomenal, man. Like, you can imagine where most of their time and resources went to. It's not art, and it's not trying to be, and although this game certainly isn't perfect, some of the missions are quite bare bones due to the lack of direction and material provided from the thing they are actually adapting. There are some diamonds in the rough, which glimmer through. It was a smart move to craft more of a Casino Royale game instead, as I can imagine if it was just Quantum, it would probably only lasted like an hour. Perhaps if the film production, went a little bit more smoothly, okay, and the developers actually received a finished script, we might be looking at a very different game. But then again, the film itself isn't amazing. Casino Royale, man. Casino Royale is the best James Bond film. I will die on that hill, and they adapted it obviously quite loosely, but just like playing through that film is it's such a good film, okay? I'm sure if there was like a different adaptation, you would have been killing about 1,000 men anyway, but it could have been far worse. It could have been 007 Legends. Thanks for watching. It was really difficult playing through this game and trying to have like a somewhat critical look at it. But that's what I found the most exciting and interesting thing to do about it. Unlike 007 Legends, where I hadn't played that before, and I wish I never did, this was something that I used to play when I was a kid. So it was just really interesting to play it and, just sort of, why did I like it? What were the good things about it? Trying to frame it in a different light and try and enjoy it in a different way. And thankfully, I did. If you ever played this Forgotten Gem, I'd maybe call it. I'd love to hear about that in the comments. I know there was a multiplayer component, but I never actually got to experience that myself. I only ever 1v1 my mate, so I don't know what the multiplayer was like. I did hear it was kind of broken, which would be quite on brand for this game. Also, if you have any other games that you have really fond memories of from back in the day, like any weird, wacky stuff, I'd love to hear that. And I was thinking about maybe even making a video on some of those things as well, because there's so much weird stuff that I used to like as a kid, that it would be interesting to sort of have a look at other people's things as well, because I'm sure we've all got those experiences ourselves. But just once again, thank you so much for watching. Next video might be the 4th part in the Ubisoft series, or maybe something else, we'll see. Cheers for now.